Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, What's Your Next? Accounting for Growers with Velosio. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us. Just a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We'll be answering any questions following the presentation. We're also recording today's session, so everyone will receive that in a follow-up email tomorrow. I'd like to go ahead and introduce today's speaker. Todd Waterman is a NAV Solutions Architect at Velosio. Todd has more than 15 years of experience as a subject matter expert in technology and business software consulting and has an extensive background in the horticultural and agricultural fields and the technologies and solutions specific to the industry. So at this point, Todd, I believe we're ready to go ahead and transition over to you.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you all for coming. So what's your next move to modern with grower accounting is our topic today. This is my last webinar of the year. Can't believe it's December and week 50 already. I'm sure everybody feels the same. So grower accounting, what is that? Really, I just call it grower accounting to get all of you to show up, because I know if it just said accounting, maybe none of the grower community would come to the webinar. So what I'm going to show today isn't necessarily specific to our industry, but I believe it's very strong tools and processes that will work very well, and I think that are probably lacking in most companies in the industry. So what I'm going to do is we're not going to talk debits and credits and basic accounting. I mean, really, accounting is accounting, as you know, I'm sure. But 160,000 different companies use this system. So I believe the accounting is very strong. And just to mention, originally the product was called Navision years and years ago, back in the early 90s, and it started as an accounting system. So accounting is really, really strong inside Dynamics NAV. And I wanted to show you, as you know, if you've seen any of my other webinars, I'm 2 years into the product. So I have been trying to master the product for the last 2 years, and I've really shared my journey with you as I find out different things and dig into different parts of the system. I really try to find the nuggets that I think would be really special and important to the grower industry. So with that, I'm going to go over just a little bit about cash and accrual accounting. One thing I do want to say, a disclaimer at the beginning here, I am not an accountant. I've never been an accountant, so I know enough to be dangerous. And but so if I can do this, anybody can. But just a little bit about accrual versus cash accounting, because we do run into this a lot in the industry. So we know that some advantages of accrual. I'm probably preaching to the choir here if there's accountants on the line here, but there's a lot of companies in the industry that run in cash. So we do usually suggest accrual. So let me explain really what we're going after here. So accrual accounting, the advantages are comparability and communication, right? If you're in cash accounting and you have sales in this month, but you don't get paid in this month, then you really don't know that the sale was in this month. That's really one of the great advantages of accrual, is visibility into really what's happening when, right? It provides more of an accurate picture of how the business is performing, because like I said, then you're even if you don't get paid for the sale, it's still credited in the sale is still in the month where it actually happened. But one of the things is it does, and this happens in new prospective customers of ours and actual customers, that if they're operating in cash right now, what we usually suggest is to operate in accrual. And then I'll talk more about this in a second, but actually all of your tax reporting is in cash. Okay. There's usually it's a little bit of pushback with that, especially if you've been running in cash. So it requires more time and effort from the staff. It does if you're not used to it. So it's a little overwhelming at first if they're used to the ease of cash. And then when you go over the accrual, but we strongly believe that accrual is the way to go. And as you know, if you're need to compare and contrast, also give the bank your financials and things like that, they're going to want accrual. So usually if you're trying to get any kind of credit, which most of us have credit lines, it is, I believe, much more difficult to gather the information from a cash accounting system. to provide to the bank. But cash accounting is very easy and simple, and also the tax advantages for farmer, which comes back to what I talked about with reporting your taxes in cash. Because as you know, and if you don't know, you should be taking advantages of the tax breaks for farmers. And as far as I understand it, if you are claiming your taxes or filing your taxes as cash, then you don't have to make those quarterly tax payments throughout the year. So that's, we're all trying to build our inventory, and at different times so we're borrowing money, and at the end, when we sell our product, we're getting money back. So that's very, very nice to not have to make those quarterly tax payments. But you have a lot less analytical information, which goes back to what I was talking about before, is the sales really aren't in the months where they happen and things like that. So, and the business owner needs to dig into non-accounting data, understand really what activities occurred during the month. And also, if you need to restate the information, if the company seeks financing or sells stock or anything like that, they're going to want it in accrual. So just one example of that I actually just thought of is this year we had an investment group that was going to purchase a nursery, and that's really happening a lot. There's a lot of different investors from outside the industry coming in to invest in the industry, which is a great thing. There's some family businesses that maybe the next in line does not want to take over, and investment groups are coming in and things like that. But this deal actually fell through because of the cash accounting. And the way that they did accounting. I know that a lot of you are doing maybe accounting in QuickBooks, and it's completely separate from production and things like that. But because this investment group could not get a clear picture of really where the company was at financially and look at a history of the revenue and expenses and things like that, they could not really provide that in a way that the investment group could use. So that actually cost the deal. So one of the great advantages of accrual is sharing that information, or if someone is interested in your company or wants to invest in it or anything, if you have accrual accounting, you're going to be able to give them standard financials that they've seen before and are going to be able to quickly compare. So, but our answer to this is usually a hybrid, like I said. We operate in accrual and convert tax reporting to cash. So that is probably the most of our customers are doing that. But the beauty is that we are, if you really want to stay with cash, we can also do that. We can configure the system it's more of a manual process, but we can configure Dynamics NAV to run in cash. We've done that for a couple customers. It's a little bit of work to do it. And depending on the size of the company, sometimes they don't really want to go through all that. So there is also an add-on that's very exciting. There's an add-on for NAV that's for cash-based accounting. And what's really special about that is you look side by side. You can see side by side all throughout the system, accrual and cash at the same time. So that's very exciting. So anyway, we have all of the above that we can do. But again, we really do try to focus on accrual and reporting in cash. Okay, so let's get to what we're going to talk about today. Two topics. One is dimensions and one is WIP. Like I said, we're not going to really be doing credits and debits here. This does have to do with accounting. So what are dimensions? Dimensions is something that's one of the most powerful things I've seen in the Dynamics NAV system. Basically what a dimension is like a tag, you should say. So here's a good example. I can remember our financial at my former company, and we had about 30 sales accounts on the financial. So we had, sales of grasses, sales of annuals, sales of perennials, sales by this salesperson, sales by that salesperson. All of these different ways that we wanted to be able to break down the financial. The problem is you have to keep adding accounts for that. And then your financial gets longer and longer. And actually the banks don't like you to constantly be changing that and adding. I used to actually get into a battle with my former boss because we wanted to see the information more granular. And he was very adamant about not adding any more accounts to the financial. So really an answer to that is dimensions. So and this is going to be much clearer when I show you in a couple minutes in the system, but what you can do is add dimensions different descriptive tags, and they can all go to a single GL account. So for instance, if you wanted to have, the product line where you can see the sales by a different product line, if you want to be able to see by customer group or product class, things like that, you can have multiple, really unlimited tags, but it's really posting all to one single sales account. Okay. And then you can use that to report on. So really these dimensions come down to, as the transactions are happening, it's adding these tags that you set up, and then you're able to slice and dice and report on them. I know that everybody has reports, and usually to find out, what does it cost you to do business with a certain customer or vendor? That's hard information to find. And so what I'm going to show you is just by out of the box dimensions with NAV, you can have information that you've always dreamed of, I believe, and real easy to get at and easy to set up. Another thing we're going to talk about is WIP, which is work in progress. That's what your cost is of the product that isn't finished yet. A lot of companies don't do that. Some do. A lot of systems don't actually track that, so that could be part of the reason they're not doing it. And I've talked to clients really that say, "Oh, that's not important. That is not that important to us." But I beg to differ on that one, because like for instance, when we used to grow poinsettias at this time of year, we would calculate down to every ounce of fertilizer, chemical, the labor to pinch, what have you, to try to come up, what is it going to cost us? Because that is a very, very competitive market, and a lot of companies are actually going away from it because it is so competitive. But we wouldn't find out until we got the financial that maybe they went over on that, and they oversprayed it, or had to do an extra pinch, or it took more labor. And we would never know that until we saw the financial and realized we lost on the crop. So what WIP does for you is that at any time you can see any production job, any product that is not finished yet, as it goes through the process, and once it's finished, what exactly that cost you. And so you can really, so it's all the billable labor, materials, and expenses on a crop that is not finished, but it's recognized as an asset on a balance sheet. So what WIP gets posted to the GL, and it provides an additional piece of information for project managers to evaluate the progress of their projects, like to be able to watch. I'm going to demonstrate this in Agriware and show you how, as you're registering these work orders, how the WIP gets updated. And not tracking WIP opens the company up to susceptibility on two primary fronts, and that's cash flow and job overruns, right? Just like I said with the poinsettias, if we're planning to grow them for this much and sell them for this much, and you go over, that's going to affect your cash flow, and that's a job overrun. Okay, so that's enough talking and PowerPointing. Let's go ahead and jump into the system here. Okay, so here's a role center. If you've seen any of my other webinars, this is our landing spot when we come into the system. This is a new role center. This is the accounting manager role center that's built in. So all of the, excuse me, all of the toolbars and everything have to do with accounting and the accounting manager's role. You can see all the queues here, all different things, payments, document approvals, cash management, all of these different little queues and shortcuts that have to do with this accounting manager position. Quick shortcuts to all their different things that they need to do. Edit cash receipt journal, new sales credit memo. So all of this is just a really area to jump off and get to the most important areas of your job. So it's all in front of you. Here's a cash flow forecast. It's something that I'd intend on making part of a webinar in the future. It's a very powerful part of NAV as well. But what are we here to talk about? We're going to start where it all starts. And I'm going to go to the chart of accounts. So here we have our chart of accounts. I love it because it looks like Excel, and it really is pretty much Excel. So this is something you build with our team, as you start out with the system. But it's pretty simple of how it's laid out. You can see the different group headers here and all of that. And you even create your own totals. So you really lay this out yourself to be however you want it. And you can see here, here's the accounts that it's totaling. you'll see this a lot today, is the two periods in between two numbers, and that's a NAV thing, that's a range. So this is saying, account 11,100 through 11,700. So you're going to see me do that a couple times here on that range. But real quick before I jump off this and go into the dimensions, which pull primarily the two global dimensions, they're called, are always pulling from this GL accounts. But if I go up here and just click on GL balance, you can see right now we are in December of 2018, which is today. And so this is showing the GL balance today. What if we want to see it last month? Or actually, let's just change it to year. Okay. And I'm going to just say so there's my range, 1/1/18 to 12/21/18. And so now we can see for the whole year. Now, what if I wanted to see last year? Look at, I can click previous period, and there's 2017. So I wanted to jump in here and show you, look at how I am so impressed how quick that is. There's no report running. We're not waiting for anything. It's that quick. Let's go back to 2018. There you go. Go forward to 2019. There's a little bit of stuff there. My systems data actually is in 2019. That's why there is some transactions in 2019. But so you can go to any account and dig in to see, like if you went down to your expenses, where are those expenses? On the 6,000, I think. So your software expense, you can dig into this and drill in, and actually it will show you the general ledger entries that make up that number. So just like everywhere else in NAV, the visibility is absolutely unbelievable. So as an accountant, when you're trying to find an error or something doesn't balance or anything, it is so quick to drill down into these and see every transaction and figure out the problem. And also very easily see stuff period by period without any runtime. In the system I used to use, that would be several different reports, and they would take 15 minutes to run. So if we were in a sales meeting and wanted to look at different things like that, or an accounting meeting, what have you, by the time the report got done, the meeting was over. So it was very difficult to really have information and on the fly be able to get at it. Okay, so kind of pulled an audible there a little bit. That doesn't have to do with dimensions, but while I was on the chart of accounts, there is a ton of power in here, and this is a living, breathing document and totally live. So every time you come in here, this is actually changing, and there's no update or anything necessary. So let's talk about dimensions. So a couple kinds, there's two kinds of dimensions. There's global dimensions and there's shortcut dimensions. A global dimension, let me just go to the, I'm going to go to the general ledger. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Let's go to the general ledger setup here. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all this general ledger setup, but I do want to show these dimensions here. So the global dimensions are the top two, and they are really the ones that are most important to you. Okay, this is something that we work with you on to come up with. You can change them after you've started, but it's we try not to do that. So you really want to come up with your global dimensions and stick with them if at all possible. And in this company here, one of the things I wanted to mention is there. In my database, as far as the grower stuff, I'm not posting invoices and doing those types of transactions. So I am using a stock Microsoft example database. So we're selling bikes and things like that in this company, but it all works the same. So in this company, they've chose department as the global dimension, and I would say probably in the industry, we have a lot of companies that choose maybe one is product line or possibly area. Area could be, what part of the country the sale came from, or the world for that matter. department, it's pretty obvious. This company actually does project services, so they wanted to have project as one of their dimensions. So, but you can choose location, product line, what have you. And then you have shortcut dimensions. So I've created these, and one is business group, right? What type of company it is. In our industry, that could be landscaper, independent, garden center, big box, anything like that. So that business group would say what type of business it is. We got a customer group. I have them, I think, as a medium, large, what size of business. We got area, which is going to say, where, could be states, could be countries. Salesperson, we want to know by salesperson. And you can see in here, I have product line and also product class. So you can have an unlimited amount of dimensions, but this is really all you can use at one time. So what makes this much clearer of really how this works is, let's first go look at my dimensions. So as I said, you can really have an unlimited amount of these. But you can see we went over most of these, but if I go into the dimension values under area, you can see that I have Europe, North America. And what's really interesting about this is that, see the indentation and all that, and you actually, when you create these, this is a little report that you've created and even added what lines to total and things like that. So this was already created, but you can do this on your own. And so this company is all over the world, obviously, North America, Europe. We could look into department. So inside the department is these values: administration, production, and sales. So you get the idea here. What's in customer group? Whoops, let's do that. So I have large, medium, private, small. Like I said, that could be anything. These, you come up with whatever you want. That's just what I have in here. So really, that's all there is to creating dimensions, as you come in here and create the dimensions. But the best way to show really how this works is actually, let's enter a sales order. And so all the user cares about is entering their sales order. So let's do a new one. Let's click get a number. Okay, so I'm going to add a customer, the Canon Group. Big plant buyers, the Canon Group. Okay, so we got that. And let's go ahead and add an item. And we're going to buy a bike, or sell a bike, I should say. Okay, let's buy 5,000 of these bikes. Okay. So what we have, hold on a second. Oh, there we go. My system's up. We don't have availability. We don't really care about that. That's a different webinar at this point. We're just trying to show dimensions. So look at what I did here. I came in, I put in the customer, and also I put an item in the sales line. And let's go ahead and look at the dimensions that are going to be created from this transaction. So think about this, all from just adding this customer and adding this one bicycle. Look at, there's 7 different dimensions that are going to be captured here. So we know the salesperson is Peter Shadow. That's coming from the customer, really, because the system knows who the salesman is for that customer. The product line is coming from the actual item, right? The bicycle, it's in finished bikes. Product class is coming from the item as well. It's a mountain bike is the class. Department, sales. Customer group, medium, it's a medium business. And the business group, it's sells to homeowners. And the area is North America. So how powerful is that? Now let's even go further here to really show what's happening here. So moral of the story is here is your employees or the order entry people don't really have to worry about capturing all this information. You can actually add these manually if there's a dimension maybe that is more dynamic, that isn't the same all the time, that you want the users to capture. Maybe it's a campaign or something. You can do that. I have them all set up as default, so they automatically go in. But so we got 7 different things. Now remember when I talked about my old financial where we had all the different sales accounts, right? All of this is going to post to one sales account, but it's going to capture all of these tags that go along with it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to post this. I'll say ship an invoice. Oop, I didn't choose tax group. Sorry about that. This is non-taxable because they're going to resell it. Come on. I think it's going to work. Okay. So it says the order has been posted and moved to the posted sales invoice. So do we want to see it? Yes, we do. Let's go ahead and open up the sales invoice we just created. So we got our one bicycle, right? Let's go over here. And this is something really neat about Dynamics NAV too, is on any sales order, purchase order, anywhere in the system that has that's posting has a navigate button. And when I click on the navigate button, excuse me, right there is all the accounts and the postings that happened when we created this invoice. So again, drill into it and see what happened. Here we got, there's 3 GL entries that happen. So if we click on that, it'll take us and show us the GL entries. This is a revenue. What is this? I'm going to click on that to see what that is. Oh, that's just discount granted. So here's our revenue account right here. So think about this. All 7 of those tags, so to speak, all posted in that one sales account with that one transaction. So they're really stored in the back end as numbers and something fancy like that. But remember, all of those different customer groups, salesmen, all those things, all of that information got saved into that one sales account. So you only need one single sales account for your entire company. Well, you have more sales accounts than that to break it up a little bit differently, obviously. But the fact is, though, that all 7 of those tags are being saved in the GL with that one post. Okay, so I think that's a good visual way to really see what's happening in the background. So now that you've seen really how the dimensions get captured and posted, things like that, let's look at some of the things you can do with them. So I'm going to go back here to my role center. Okay, analysis views. Analysis views, this is reports that you actually create on your own. We get so many questions about what are the out-of-the-box reports that NAV has, and there's hundreds of them. But the most power is in the ones that you create yourselves. Every company has different ways they want to look at information. Every company's different, has different proprietary areas. So it's hard to provide everything that you would want in a view that you want it. And that's, we've done a lot of webinars on Power BI and stuff like that, so you can create your own reports. Well, this is just out of the box inside the system, and they're called analysis views. So let's actually create one ourselves here. 1 second here. Need to do something. All right. I'll try this over here. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'm going to say new, and I'm going to call this revenue analysis. Okay. So the account source is GL. So look at what we're going to do here. We're going to figure out what GL accounts that we want this analysis view to pull from. Okay, so I know my revenue accounts start at 4,000. We're talking revenue. So here's all of our GL accounts. Let's go down to 4,000. Come on, I can. Okay. So revenue starts at 4,000. Look at, I'm just going to drag down here. and go to 49950. Where is that? Right up. There it is. So you can see I selected all the accounts between that range, and those are all the revenue accounts. I say okay. And now it did that range for me right there. If you know what the accounts are, you can just type it in, but you can also browse like that and select them. I'm going to say, let's look at this by month, and we'll starting date. I'm going to go back to January 1 this year. Now look at what we got here, dimensions, right? So we're going to look at revenue, and I'm going to put some dimensions here that I want to slice it by. So let's see, we want to look at area, where the revenue came from, maybe business group. Let's see here, salesperson, and customer group. Okay. Now I'm going to just update this. Okay. Now, here's our analysis view that we created. So now I go into this analysis by dimensions. So really what you're looking at here, there's not much here, lots of power though. But really what you're doing is you're creating it's a pivot table, okay? So we got this is the analysis view we're using, is that Rev one I just created. And so I'm saying on the lines, think of Excel, you got your X and Y axis. I'm saying show the GL account on the line and then the period on the columns, okay? And this is starting at today's date. So I'm gonna say, let's go to 01/01/18 ... to 12/31/18, and that'll turn those into dates, okay? Now I'm saying you can show actual amounts. We have lots to choose from in here. You can show budgeted amounts, the variance percentage, index percentage, things like that. I'm going to leave it at that. And show amount field. I could show debit or credits. And I'm including the closing entries. I can round if I want to. One thing here, they're going to show, I want to show the column name rather than like it show a date. I want to see the month name. And this show opposite sign is, nav is going to show the revenue as a negative number. So I'm going to say, show it as positive. And we'll switch this to month. Okay. So let's go ahead and run it. I say show matrix. And there we go. So again, you can see there was no run time. Didn't take any time at all to run. But I can see that a lot of these, we didn't have sales in some of these accounts, but there it is by month. And here's the different month names, right? So what if we want to look at it differently? What if we want to say, we want to throw a dimension in here and say, let's look at customer group in the columns, okay? So now we're going to see GL and customer group. Let's run it again. So now we can see our sales, but also by large business, medium business, private, small business. We can even reverse these and say, let's see the customer group and salesperson. Let's see if that does something. Don't have a lot of sales in here, but you can see Pete Shadow, looks like he only deals with medium business and small. Don't have anything for these, but look at how quickly it pivoted this. Now we see the different sizes of the companies with the salespeople as the column, so you get the idea. Now you may say, now we got lots of other dimensions, but I can only do two. Well, you can only have a row and a column, right, in a pivot table, but look at all these filters. So I could be doing any of this of salesperson, customer, also by area, maybe, and I want to filter it for only Europe. There you go. So those are analysis views, tons of power there. One of the things, let me just go back to here. and get a little bit more data in here. But what's really nice is we could say, I'm going to say customer group. And then over here, we'll have the period. Oh, went back to 2018. So let's do. Okay. Okay. So now look at what you can do here. You can come in here. You can see I keep going back and I'm changing my filters. I'm changing some of these things. You can also export this to Excel. Allegedly. Takes a second. It's doing lots of fancy things here. Here it comes. So it already comes out of Excel already in a pivot table. So everything that I was just doing by going back and maybe filtering by something different, you can see here is what we were already looking at. But maybe I want to take away the customer group rows and I want to see business group as rows. And now we have our business groups. Maybe rather than month, I want to see it by quarter. Now it's by quarter. So you get the idea. So you can create these, export them to Excel and really go nuts. It might be even a little bit more efficient and quicker to do it this way. You can add your own calculations, what have you. Very, very powerful. Go ahead and close that. Okay. So that is analysis view. So just think about that. Like I said, people asking about what reports we have. Look at how quickly we just created a revenue report and how many different ways I can look at it. You know, that's information that my former company would put together. It was very difficult to gather all that information. And I would have reports that I created and actually had to create the customer groups and things like that in a spreadsheet that I had to link together and to really report like this. But, you know, it took a lot of time. And especially at year end, when they want to look at all this stuff to budget for the next year, you know, it took me a week at a time to gather all the different things and basically tape them all together. So that is analysis views and some of the power of dimensions. A lot more that I could show you, but that gives a little introduction to that. And the beauty is it's all, you know, look at all that information coming from the GL. What I found is the reports I used to write were just going after the sales lines and, you know, quantity times the price and things like that. And so a lot of times the sales reports didn't exactly match the financials. So this is all coming from the chart of accounts. All right. Next topic. Let's talk a little bit about WIP. I'm going to change servers here and go back to my comfort zone of growing. Just got to change back here. Come on, baby. The fun about having to jump into another server. Got to wait for this to open for a second. There we go. Okay. This is back to my home base comfort area of production. All right. Let's take a look at how the WIP works. So let's go here. I'm going to just plan a crop real quick. Okay. So there's a little plan group I have of some items. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll plan to grow some black cherry petunias. Let's say let's do 10,000 of these. Okay. I release that. So it's going to create a production job for 10,000 black cherry. Okay, so it created one production job. Let's go take a look at it. All right, if you haven't seen this before, this is a production job. And so you can see everything we have here. We're going to transplant for 4 weeks. Look what we got, 5% scrap. All this is kind of review. We've gone over this before in other webinars. But one thing I want to point out is on the activity scheme down here where you have all of your inputs and your labor, resources, all of that. Take a look over here. If I scroll over, you can see it has the costs. Here's the quantity and the unit costs. So I have this configured right now using standard costing. We can do LIFO, FIFO, average. That I'm using standard at the moment. But so it's given your total cost right here. It's already calculating that, okay? And that's if it's as predicted. Like right here, we usually do 1,500 plants per hour. So it's saying it should take about 7 hours. Once we register the work order, maybe that changes. Maybe it took longer, took less, what have you. So right now, this is what it's saying this costs are. So even if I click on the statistics up here, it's showing it should take 66699. Wow, it's evil. Anyway, so it should be 6,666.99 is what it's predicting that this should cost us. Now I do not have any of my other overhead, heating costs and things like that configured right now, but you can also configure that so it will calculate that as well. And you can see over here our actual, we haven't done anything yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something. I'm going to just write from here for this example. I'm going to actually release this. Oh, sorry. I'm going to release this job so we can actually start it. And I'm going to create the document, which is the work order. I just created it. There's my work order number. Let's show it. All right, the date, this all doesn't really matter for this example, but we're going to say, okay, we did plant the 10,526. Or let's say we just did 10,500 for whatever reason. We didn't have enough liners or something, or some fell on the floor. You can see now it changed all of our input numbers down here. Okay, so this is how it's keeping track of inventory and all the rest. And let's go ahead and approve and post this. Come on, my system's crawling a little bit because I just opened it. There we go. All right, I might actually pull that back open. Okay, so let's do the same what we looked before. Remember, we can go to our navigate button and actually see what happened during the posting. So let's go to another entry, job ledger entry. Let's see here. Here's all our entries for what we used. I'm actually looking for one. Sorry, maybe it's this one. I can't find where the WIP account is, but we'll show it elsewhere. So these are the postings that happen. Okay, let's go back and should be able to go down here. And now we see our WIP right here. See, there's a WIP tab. And so I'm not done with this yet, but I've already spent 6,260.89. So it looks like most of the labor and everything is on that first phase there, not so much on the spacing and that. But if I click on that, come on, there it goes. Oops. There's your ledger entries right there. And so it's posting all this to the WIP account, finished goods, inside the GL. So you can be looking at, what your cost is right from those analysis views, things like that. But also for your production people, or to be able to compare this stuff. Like I said, to be able to, you can see in our statistics now that we've actually registered some things. I failed to register the labor, so, but anyway, you get the idea here. And so you can actually react or watch as a crop grows. Maybe it's a crop that takes 6 months. Like my poinsettia example, you can watch as different activities happen. What is it costing you? And are you within your budget or what you had predicted this job should cost? So that's a little bit about WIP. Not too complicated. Like I said, a lot of companies say, we're not really that concerned with it, but I think it is something that is very important. And we know how tight labor and resources and price increases on inputs and everything like that, that more than ever before, we have to watch our costs. The problem is how hard is it to do? Well, I think in a system like this, it really does it all for you in the background once it's set up correctly. And the information is very easily accessible to be more reactive than, or proactive, I should say, than just reactive. Okay, that is all I have for today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Rebecca and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Todd. We did have a couple of questions come in. Can you access dimensions from outside report writers like Power BI?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. Yes, you absolutely can. And so I do a ton of Power BI, and I'm so excited about the dimensions because look at how much work's already done for you if those dimensions are captured, and then you can connect to it with a report writer like Power BI and slice and dice it in there to where show it more visually with graphs and charts. But absolutely, that's very easy to access from external programs like that.
Your examples showed using dimensions based on the GL. Can dimensions be used in other sales reports like future sales?
Yeah, another really good question. Remember, we were looking at those analysis views, and those were really inside the accounting area. Well, in the sales area, you can create sales analysis views because the GL is not going to show any future orders, right? It's only anything that's been posted. So in the sales reports are looking at what's called the value entry journal. There's also there's a journal for everything, right? This started out as an accounting system. So there's a customer journal or customer ledger. There's an item ledger, a vendor ledger, so it captures every transaction and keeps it forever. So with the sales reports, are looking at some of those other ledgers to get the information of what's in the future and such, but you absolutely have access to all those dimensions to slice and dice it the same way. And you can add even more in that area that you use in the sales area. So the answer is absolutely. And one thing I forgot to mention too was we've actually had multi-companies where when we start the project, their intent is to have, maybe they have one company that's a legal entity for sales and another company that they have a legal entity for production. And so it can get pretty complicated. The system can absolutely handle multi-companies and intercompany transfers and things like that. But we've done it with dimensions where there's one chart of accounts, and it's all posting to one chart of accounts. But that top, global dimension is company. So under that dimension, there's 3 companies. So you can do financial reporting and all that by dimension. So really you have one chart of accounts, one company, but the dimension represents the 2 or 3 other companies. And so it really simplified this whole multi-company structure and used dimensions to do it.
Thanks, Todd. It looks like that's all of the questions we have for today. So I just want to thank you again for the great presentation, and thanks everyone for attending. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.